I just dropped 15 pounds of nothing but fat. That's from 196 pounds to 181 pounds, and I did it in just 30 days. And in this video, I'm going to tell you exactly how I did it. This isn't just theory. This is backed by research from the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition, Duke, and Harvard. So what I'm telling you here is a mix of what's worked for me and what's proven by science to work. Stick around to the end because the last tip is a bit counterintuitive, but it's the thing that kept me on track. And quite frankly, without it, I wouldn't have been able to lose the weight I did in just 30 days. Whether you've struggled with weight loss before or you're just starting your fitness journey, this is highly applicable to you. Who doesn't want to lose that last 20 pounds and really get looking shredded? We're talking that 10% body fat look. That's what I got down to in 30 days, and I'm going to show you what that looks like, exact before and after photos, and the plan you need to get you there from where you are today. So let's get into it. Back in June, I decided I was going to tune my body up. I had gotten a little bit lazy, and where I was at was a bit of a fluffy 196 pounds. Back at the beginning of the year, I was up to even 200. Now, on a guy like me that's like 5'10" on a good day, that's a decent chunk of weight. And it's always a balance for me. I want to look like I go to the gym, but I also want to look like I'm cut. And so I think where I've netted out these days is I want to have visible abs. And that for me is on the DEXA scan, that's around like 15% body fat. On the gym body fat scale, it's like 5%. What it looks like to a regular human being, though, is about 10% body fat. Now, I'm 49, and like I said, 5'10", about 200 pounds at the start of this year, about 196 pounds in June. And because I'm 49, as we all know, your hormonal levels, your testosterone levels go down about 1% or 2% a year after about 35. And so what I'm about to break down applies to anyone that's looking to lose weight in a short period of time and get ripped, shredded, whatever you want to call it. But it especially applies to men in their 30s and 40s that really have to sort of fight against their own metabolism. It's not as easy anymore to lose that weight. But if you're also in your 20s, this is stuff you can build into your routine now, so that you're thinking ahead, so that you can arrive at 40, 50 years old and still look like you are leagues ahead of your peers, like you are shredded and in great shape, not just a bloat lord. So first up, the science behind it, it's not terribly complex. You have to consume less than you burn. And this is caloric deficit. And for us to be able to understand caloric deficit, we have to first understand what our basal metabolic rate is. That is the amount of calories we're burning just going about our daily lives, just, basically at rest, if you will. Basal metabolic rate is, strictly speaking, calories burned while at rest. But what we're going to do is we're going to use an online calculator, and I'll show it up here. I'll also link to it in the description. And we're going to find our starting basal metabolic rate so that we can estimate what our caloric deficit needs to be. Typically, if you are looking to lose weight over a short period of time, you're going to have to go with a more aggressive caloric deficit. A lot of times you'll see a tiered approach to caloric deficits where in weeks 1 and 2, you're going to start slow with like 100 calories and then gradually increase that as your body adapts, 200 calories, 300 calories, in subsequent weeks to widen that caloric deficit. Problem with this is if you don't have a ton of experience in actually measuring your caloric intake using apps like MyFitnessPal or Carb Manager, which I've covered in previous videos, and you're not really fastidious about recording every last thing you eat and drink, every last thing, then something like 100 calories is basically a margin of error. Whether it's a margin of error in how you've measured your food or how the food is labeled or you forgetting to record something, it's just, you're going to be frustrated. There's no way we have time to start with a 100 calorie deficit or a 200 calorie deficit, let's say, on such a short time frame as 30 days. So what are we going to do? Well, what we need to do is take a more aggressive approach, in short. So let's just assume for the sake of this exercise, and I actually use some of my own metrics, because I have slightly more muscle, let's say, on my frame than somebody who doesn't, my basal metabolic rate, the amount of calories I'm burning every day, is going to land around 2,800. That's factoring in my amount of exercise as well, probably more like 2,800, let's say, calories a day. So for me to be in deficit, I'm going to have to be at least around 2,300 if I want to start relatively slowly. But I knew myself, and I knew I wanted to be pretty aggressive this time around, so I went to 1800. So I went to, in theory, about 1,000 calorie deficit from what my caloric needs were based on my activity level and my body composition. That's probably at least 2x as aggressive as a typical recommendation, which might be around 20%. 20% of your calories as the most extreme, your daily calories is the most extreme amount you should enter into a caloric deficit. But we're going to do some things to manage this caloric deficit, and I'm going to break them down a little later in the video, so this won't feel anywhere near as bad as you think it's going to feel. There are some hacks we can use, especially given that this is a short period of time, that we can use to make this feel not so bad and to really sort of hijack our metabolism, kick it into high gear, and burn off that weight in a short period of time. I've covered this before, but if you want to get an even more scientific read of your current caloric needs, you can do something called a DEXA scan. DEXA scan is what it sounds like. It is a scan like an X-ray that breaks down your body composition. It'll look at things, even things like bone density, obviously visceral fat distribution, and it will look at the amount of lean muscle mass as well on your frame, which will basically tell you how much your caloric intake should be every day. And then it'll also recommend cutting and gaining ranges, basically in terms of caloric intake based on your exact body makeup. But that's going to run you $150. And if you don't have the time or the money, you can use an online calculator. Just be really honest with the online calculators when they ask you about your fitness level, because it's really tempting to say that you're extremely active when you're not extremely active, and then you're going to wind up skewing the caloric recommendations. You're going to wind up with a high recommendation for your current basal metabolic rate, and then when you sort of produce a deficit from there, let's say you choose to go with like an 800 calorie deficit from there, it's not going to be as deep a cut as it would be if you had properly estimated your activity level as part of that online calculator. So be really, really honest with yourself in this step, because this is the baseline we're establishing upon which at least our food intake is based. So it's important to be actually accurate. And so we can target an appropriate deficit for the next 30 days. Extremely important among all the calories you're consuming, the most important thing is the protein macro. So going about your everyday, it is extremely easy to eat a primarily carb or fats-based diet. If you look at the Starbucks glass case, when you go and get your coffee in the morning, the amount of protein in there relative to carbs is extremely low. So when you pick up the thing that represents your morning snack, it is going to be primarily carbs. It's once you start training yourself and recording what you're eating using, say something like MyFitnessPal, you will see how conscientious you have to be in order to eat a protein dominant diet. But that is absolutely what's required in order to kick your body into burning more than it would otherwise. Your body will have to work harder to burn protein than anything else, and that alone will allow you to burn more calories. And protein, of course, has that muscle sparing effect. It feeds your muscles, and it will keep you, when you're in a caloric deficit, having a high protein intake will keep you from essentially muscle wasting type effects, where your body will become sort of catabolic and want to eat muscle fibers, want to eat those hard-earned gains, and we really don't want that. We obviously want to, when we're looking to become shredded in a short amount of time, we want to preserve as much of our existing muscle as possible, and to do that we have to feed it a pretty solid diet of protein. And you've heard me say this before, but that is at least probably 3/4 of a gram of protein for every pound of body weight. You can see in the bodybuilding community that just ranges up and up. It can be 1.5 grams, 2 grams of protein per pound of body weight. But really at the very, very bare minimum, I would say 3/4 of a gram of protein for every pound of body weight. Yeah, if you're 200 pounds, that's going to be 150 grams of protein in a day that you need to be taking in. And when it comes to getting protein easily, again, I've covered this before, but there are some go-to sources that I have. Obviously, the most obvious is simply protein powder, a simple whey protein powder, that you can mix in with, whatever you like. 0% Greek yogurt is usually my go-to because it is 0%, so it's not high in fat. It is very, very protein efficient. I think it's something like 17 grams of protein per 3/4 of a cup, and 3/4 of a cup is like 100 calories, I believe. So that's a fantastic protein to calories ratio. And so you throw some whey protein in there as well, and now that is a very, very protein heavy meal or snack. I can also put Greek protein on, or Greek protein. I can also put Greek yogurt on top of extra lean ground turkey that I fry up and put taco seasoning on. So those are another, that's another great protein source. So you're going to want to look, like chicken, things that are just extremely protein dominant, protein efficient to have at the ready. So you can easily make up your protein macro, because a lot of the stuff that life throws you otherwise is carb or fat or both dominant. So you're going to have to constantly be in that. If you still want to have some of the things you like, you're going to have to be in that push and pull, yin yang sort of relationship with protein and the other macros, fat and carbs. Now, how do you keep yourself from feeling hungry? And this is an absolutely key part of dieting. This is the key part. Obviously, if you haven't done this before and you're not used to hunger signaling and being able to ignore it, because it is a skill to be able to ignore it. It's a skill you can develop over time. Anytime you feel hungry, it doesn't mean you have to eat. But there are some ways, some things we can do to alleviate that feeling and to make it easier to make it through the day. One of the chief ways to avoid feeling hungry is to fill your stomach. And there are a couple ways to do that, at least in my experience. You can use high volume foods. So you can have a bag of the salad mix without all the dressing and nuts and all the other stuff that comes with it. And boy, is that ever going to fill your stomach, so basically take a can or two of tuna, throw it on top of like a Caesar salad without any of the Caesar salad mix and that sort of stuff. That's a massive meal. The salad's not going to really count for hardly anything from a caloric perspective, but it'll fill your stomach and it'll keep you from, it'll basically increase your satiety and keep you from feeling hungry quite so fast. I also love eating about 2.5 cups of frozen sliced strawberries from Costco. They're about 100 calories. And because it's just so cold and large, it takes a while until I want to eat again after having eaten that. So that would be another way to increase your satiety. And obviously the other way to fill your stomach is with liquids. And you should be drinking probably about 4 liters a day worth of water or fluids. And just from a protein synthesis standpoint, you're going to need that much liquid in your body to be able to synthesize the proteins you're consuming. But it'll also fill your stomach. And if it's cold water, it'll have the same kind of effect as the strawberries, where it increases the sort of thermic effect, the sort of, burning effect of your body, and will give your body sort of something to do with itself instead of craving food. High amount of water consumption is a good thing. I also use, as I mentioned before, a lot of diet sodas because it is liquid. There's 0 calories, and I feel like I'm having a treat. So there's that kind of satisfaction that goes into having those as well. So I will use those quite liberally over the 30 days. I could be drinking 8 diet sodas sometimes in a day. And I know people will jump at me in the comments about artificial sweeteners, but I don't care. This is 30 days and I am trying to lose some weight, and I'll do whatever it takes to do it. And it's also really important to distinguish thirst from other signals like hunger signals. I often find myself in front of the fridge wanting to graze on things and realizing that I'm doing that because I'm feeling dehydrated. I haven't drank enough. So really stay on top of that water or liquid consumption. Do it with, if you have to, a gallon water bottle, if you will. I've used that before, or at least, a couple liters worth of a water bottle sitting beside you that you can, down a couple of a day and really just make sure you're on top of it. And then another way to, of course, manage your hunger levels is with caffeine. I drink a decent amount of coffee, and that use of coffee will get me through the first portion of the day, sometimes up to about noon without eating very much at all, if anything. And then you're just left with, if you're like me, you go to bed around 9 or 10 and you want to stop eating around 8, you're left with about 8 hours that represents your eating window. And now you're almost into like an intermittent fasting type scenario, which is great. And after the first week or 10 days, when you start adapting to needing less food, and your body will adapt. It'll be tough at first, but your body will adapt and it will just, adjust itself to some extent to that new caloric intake level. Then getting from noon to 8 without, with eating, let's say 1,800 calories, absolutely no problem, especially if you're deploying some of those other strategies around eating high volume foods and having a lot of liquid. Research does show that people that consume 16 to 32 ounces of water before meals experience greater weight loss than people that do not. So that really speaks to that effect of filling your stomach with something other than food as a way to promote satiety and keep you from overeating. And lastly, from a food perspective, I think I've mentioned this a little bit before, but make some smart swaps. So for instance, I don't drink regular milk, and for a while I was drinking oat milk thinking that that was better, but oat and regular milk are about the same amount of calories. They're about 120 calories per cup. And if you switch to something like almond milk, which tastes nowhere near as good, but you will adapt to it, you're down around 30 calories a cup. So literally a quarter of the calories. You can put that in your coffee. You can use it on cereal if you can afford to eat cereal. So make some intelligent swaps like that, and you'll be well on your way to being able to maintain your diet. Lastly, I highly recommend creatine, 5 to 10 grams of creatine every day. You can just drink it in water if you want, or throw it in that yogurt, or however you prefer. Put it in a protein shake. But creatine, I know people have talked about it leading to water retention, which may give you less of that cut look, rather that ripped look, but it actually just increases or promotes water retention within your muscles. So you will still look cut. It won't just increase water retention underneath your skin, which would then make you look a little bloaty. So definitely stay on top of the creatine. It'll also help just basically preserve your lean mass, so you're not losing that due to being in a caloric deficit. Okay, from an exercise perspective, we're obviously going to work off a hypertrophy regime here. We're not strength training during this period. Quite simply is training to lift as much as you can in terms of weight in a 1 RM sort of scenario, a 1 rep maximum scenario. And hypertrophy is literally just trying to grow muscles, trying to appear big. And so I stay in a hypertrophy mode all the time. I don't actually care about strength training or trying to be the strongest guy. I'm never going to be the strongest guy. I just want to look half decent, and that's entirely hypertrophy. And the difference really boils down to rep ranges. So a hypertrophy rep range is going to be about 8, 12, 16 or more, generally 8 to 12 kind of reps per set of any given exercise. And obviously strength training is anything less than that, usually let's say 6 reps, where you're really just trying to max out what you can lift on something. So you're going to want to stay in that hypertrophy rep range, because of course our goal here is to grow and preserve our muscles over this 30 days. And so from a lifting perspective, we want to be doing 3 to 4 sessions a week, probably 4 to 5 exercises. And then I would say about 4 to 6 working sets of each exercise, and 8 to 12 reps within each set. That's kind of your prescription for the lifting for this week, for this 30 days rather. And I would tack cardio onto the end of every session, usually 30 minutes of low intensity steady state cardio. That's treadmill or elliptical. And that's about 120 to 140 beats per minute in terms of intensity. And that's your optimal fat burning range, basically. And so I would also probably come in for an extra session or 2 every week just for cardio. So a note about low impact steady state cardio is that research has shown a 50% lowered chance of injury when you're doing this type of cardio versus anything more intense, such as running. In addition to getting a lot of walking around in, so 10,000 plus steps a day in, on average, at least, of walking. And that will give you the caloric expenditure you need, the lifting not so much, but the cardio and the walking to create even more of a deficit, in addition to obviously the deficit you're creating through your diet. And a note about walking: when it comes to walking, it's best to time it after meals. If you can afford to schedule things accordingly, it will help with post-meal digestion. And then you can also sort of get your steps in at that time. Now, the Journal of Applied Physiology recommends recovery of about 48 to 72 hours for men over 40. That's between exercising one particular muscle group. So if you hit chest on Monday as part of your routine, plan not to hit it again until Wednesday or Thursday. It depends on what kind of split you're doing, obviously, but some splits obviously can have you hitting the same muscle group twice a week on different days. Others prioritize one muscle group, let's say, on a particular day, and that's it. But you do want to give yourself enough of a recovery time between hitting that particular muscle group that you're not just slowly degenerating in terms of your ability to bring your A game to the gym. Now, what are you going to work out at the gym during this time? Well, it's going to be the big compound lifts, pretty much. Obviously some accessory stuff, because if you're going for maximum cuttage, if you want to look really ripped and good, you're obviously going to do a bit of accessory work. You want your biceps to look good. You want your traps to look good. The stuff that gives you that sort of rounded look, like the outside of your arms here, your triceps, gives you that nice silhouette. So there will be accessory work in that regard, but you're obviously not going to want to neglect, the stuff that gives your overall body size, essentially. So chest, back, squats, lat pull downs, bench press. It has to be sort of primary exercises in your routine during this time. Okay. Lastly, and this is the thing that kept me on track above everything else, this is, if there's one thing you're going to take away from this is how you build lasting habits. For me, it's the concept of flexible adherence. And what does this mean? Well, adherence is your ability to stick with any particular program, whether that's diet or exercise. And what I find is, for me to stick with something, I have to enjoy it. And for me to enjoy it, it has to be adaptable, therefore flexible. So what is going to keep you showing up to the gym or staying on your diet? Well, it's not going to be 100% rigid adherence. Yes, we all want to be that person, but we are human. And let's, for instance, take the gym. There are going to be days when you don't want to go to the gym. What I do on those days, I still get into that gym, but I do the exercises that I have fun doing. So that could be just the glamour muscle exercises, can be bench press, biceps, whatever it takes. So let's say I do maybe marginally less cardio on a day like that, but vow to make it up the next day. You just got to go easy on yourself, and you got to make it so you still check the box of having done the thing, but you did it by making it fun for yourself. That's flexible adherence. So from a diet perspective, what this might look like is maybe one day I don't hit my 150 grams or 160 grams of protein. Instead, I hit 120 grams, and I spent the difference that I would have spent on protein, I spend that on carbs. And the next day I vow to, seesaw a bit the other direction. But that's flexible adherence. That's what's going to give you the juice to make it through something like 30 days. Research has shown that new habit formation actually takes 66 days, not 21 days, like a lot of people often quote, 3 weeks and so on, to form a new habit. It's more like 66 days. So don't expect that at some point during this 30-day transformation that we're going through here, this is going to just click and become something that you're just zoned in on doing automatically. It is going to take effort, and it will require something like flexible adherence as a strategy to make it possible for you to fight through those lulls and the little, when you have that little flagging willpower, just to get yourself into the gym and check the box for having done it. It may not be the best workout, but what I often find is once I get in the gym, even if I got into the gym by telling myself I'm just going to do the stuff I enjoy doing, I'm going to do a bicep workout, even though I really should be doing legs, like story of my life. Once I get in there, I actually think, you know what, I'm here. I may as well do X, Y, and Z. I may as well do another set of this. I may as well do this other exercise for abs or something. So it's just getting over that hump, making it desirable enough for you to do the thing and get, 80% of the results so that you can keep up that consistency, because consistency is where we're going to win here. We've got 30 days. You can't really mess around with missing a bunch of days. We're going to have to force ourselves to be pretty consistent for the duration of these 30 days to get the results we want. One underrated aspect that we're going to want to pay attention to during these 30 days is our sleep quality. Research shows that 7+ hours of sleep increases fat loss by up to 55%. So if you're chronically getting bad sleep, that will affect your ability to not just recover, but to lose that fat. So the other really awesome upside of prioritizing sleep is that's time you're not eating. If I can get into bed by 9:30 every evening, then the odds of me overeating are far less, because I'm just not up late. As soon as we go past 10, I get bored, I get munchies, and now I'm going to overeat. So not only are you going to burn more fat by getting more than 7 hours of sleep a night, but you're going to consume less calories because you're sleeping, a third of the day, 8 of the 24 hours. So if there's ever a time to prioritize getting good sleep, it's going to be during these next 30 days where you're trying to cut down and get as lean as possible. Okay, and during these 30 days, you're going to want to discreetly acutely track everything you're doing. And so you need a good body fat scale, or at least a weight scale, and you need to step on that every day at the same time in the morning. I don't know, take a piss in the morning, step on the scale, like has to be basically the same time every single morning, wearing the same thing, your underwear, whatever it is, so that you have that objective baseline comparison of how you're doing. What you'll notice is that some days, depending on if you ate late or you're a little bit bloated or whatever, maybe you overate actually one day, which hopefully, you're not doing too much of over the course of 30 days, but your weight will fluctuate. It won't always just, obviously trend down in a steady line. But if we trajectorize those daily weigh-ins over the course of a week, we will see a downward trend, provided your caloric intake is less than what you're burning. And then we're able to see very easily that we're headed in the right direction. If you're only weighing yourself once a week, you do run the risk of weighing yourself at an inopportune time, and you haven't lost as much weight as you think you have, and now you got to wait a whole week to see if you're actually headed in the right direction. So this is why I think it's extremely crucial that you weigh yourself every single day during a constrained little period like these 30 days. We want to have as much data as we can and be able to tune how we're feeling, how we're progressing. Maybe we're not in as big a deficit as we feel we could be, and then we can play with our results as we go. We can play with the inputs as we go to get better results. I've talked about it before, but from a caloric intake perspective, one of the best tools to use is MyFitnessPal, or Carb Manager would be another tool. Basically, you're going to want to be able to track your daily and weekly caloric intake, and you do need an easy way to do this that probably isn't a spreadsheet or a notebook, something that will do it digitally. If you've got to just buckle down and pay a month subscription for one of these things to get all the features you need, do it. 30 days, we're really just hyper-focused on putting everything in our favor to lose as much weight as possible in this short amount of time. Lastly, research shows that 94% of successful maintainers in terms of weight loss combine both diet and exercise. So you really have to do both. At the very, very minimum, we need to get that diet under control. You cannot, as I've said before, outwork a bad diet. So that's why I've spent so much time talking about diet here. Get that diet under control, and then you're adding, the solid lifting, cardio, walking program on top of that to increase that deficit even further. You're adding lots of water consumption on top of that to help process all of that protein. You're employing strategies, like I mentioned, around sort of caffeine or filling your stomach with large leafy meals, that sort of stuff, to reduce your hunger signaling, to increase your satiety. And basically, we're getting to the point where we can get through a 30-day period, having lost as much weight as possible. In my case, it was about 15 pounds in that 30-day period. I went on to lose another about 6 pounds in the subsequent 2 weeks. But basically, I did most of my cutting in that 30-day period. And obviously, this gets easier and easier over time as you build more muscle. The more muscle you put on, the easier you burn calories, obviously. So now I'm in a slightly better position than I used to be, having more muscle mass as I do. So I can turn around weight loss transformations just a little bit faster. And this will get easier for you the more you do this. The more you build up that base of lean muscle mass, you'll be able to turn around your occasional sort of indiscretions when it comes to eating and putting on a bit of fluffy weight. You'll be able to turn that around a lot faster, even if you are a bit older, because you will have the benefit of basically an engine that runs faster, an engine that cranks harder because you've got more muscle mass on you. It can crank through food more efficiently. It can crank through calories than someone who doesn't have that kind of muscle mass on them. So I hope you found that instructive. This is how I got from 196 pounds to 181 pounds in just 30 days. And I could show those photos again in case you missed them. But basically, I went from fluffy to ripped. And in the bodybuilding community, it's actually not ripped at all. The bodybuilding scale for ripped is much more aggressive. I can put a meme up here about that. But to the average person, you are going to look ripped after 30 days if you follow these steps. And that's all that matters, is what Joe Blow thinks of your physique. Joe or Jane Blow. So keep at it. Let me know if this works for you, and let me know what other tips you have. And if you found this at all interesting, don't forget to like and subscribe. But thank you for watching.